5% of Hong Kong GDP runs through Octopus. So
Oh,
people like spend a lot through our network.
running 5% of the Hong Kong GDP, do you have to worry about the price tag of the influencer?
Oh yeah, we do.
You
Yeah,
do.
we have very
How do you measure things, ROIs or KPIs?
there are the vanity metrics, right? But ultimately, I think
So you are a storyteller.
yeah.
Okay. So how do you tell those stories?
The story is it's all about how to make
How do you train your CEO to be a good media person?
to prepare my CEO for a media interview. I would
Today we have a special guest, Kinan Suchanawit. Could you tell us something about you, about your company, for those who are outside of Hong Kong?
Thank you, Philip. So Octopus is ubiquitous in Hong Kong. I mean, nobody can in Hong Kong literally can live without one, right? Like you use it to take the MTR, you use it to get into your office building, even your home. Some people use it at school. So we are like a payment network, a payment company. For people outside of Hong Kong, we are actually also working behind the scene in a lot of the transport businesses around the world. It's like, for example, in Auckland, in New Zealand, in the Netherlands, and also recently in Dubai, we runs like the clearing and settlement system behind for these transit operators.
Would you call yourself a fintech company?
Yeah, we like to joke and say we are the grandfather, the OG of fintech in Hong Kong at least, or even in the world, because we actually pioneered contactless payment in transit, right? Like so in the past, 27 years ago, exactly, we were the first to use tap to pay, which is a superior form of payment method if you are having a if you're in a high velocity and high volume situation, right? Like rush hour, people getting out of the train back into their office building, they need something fast. We want to be able to be able to use it across like different payment networks, right? So recently, last year, we launched this card where basically you can use you can top up in Hong Kong dollar, and you can also use it in renminbi in mainland China.
So you are the head of communications for Octopus. What is your main role as in your position?
Right. I always see communications as helping a company to, first of all, like protect this reputation and also to strengthen and build on top of that reputation.
Mhm.
Uh,
Well, Octopus is so famous in Hong Kong. Do you really need to do anything?
a lot of it has to do with changing people's perception. People still think that we, in some part of society, anyways, they think that we are old, we are like outdated. But in fact, like there are a lot of technology being put behind to just get things to work. Like you mentioned earlier that because of the decentralized architecture of our payment, like essentially like your card is the key and the reader is sort of like the nodes that would unlock the transaction, right? Like that offline to connect it to online payment. So I think people might think like we are a bit not as young or as fresh, but actually there are a lot of works being done.
All right.
To and part of my job is to help tell that story.
So you are a storyteller.
Yeah.
Okay. So how do you tell those stories?
The story is it's all about how to make life easier. Like payment should be invisible in a way so you can enjoy other things in life. So our sort of tagline is to make everyday life easier. We're so ubiquitous that we serve like a 10-year-old student all the way to like an 80-year-old grandma, right? Like so we have to be able to talk to a wide spectrum of people.
How do you tell this story?
It would have to start with the customer, right? That's the human part. Any good story would have the human element in it, and I feel like as long as you're true to what your customers wants, you tell the story from also from their perspectives. I also read quite a bit of literature around like how brands should tell their story, and along that line, and they always they can get quite abstract, right? Like talking about like Jungian archetypes
Yes.
and all that kind of thing. I think it can be simpler. Like the hero is always the customers, and usually not your product, right? Like people tend to focus too much on the products, but because our product is also pretty ubiquitous, is for example, recently we launched a campaign called Joy You for the cardholders who are age above 60, right? So we ran a pretty big campaign with 60 plus brands in Hong Kong last August, and we're trying to make that an annual thing. So people in like oldie but goldie demographics, right? Like they would feel that there's something for them. So storytelling in that sense is also trying to find angles that will resonate with that particular group of people. One of the challenges as a business is that you know students or young people might use it, right? Like so that's why like when we do our Octopus on mobile, we tend to work a lot with different intellectual properties, right? Like Hello Kitty, and we do a lot of like anime kind of like card design. So I think that's creates stickiness,
Right.
right? And students, a lot of them don't have credit cards. They can also use our virtual card, which we partner with MasterCard, right? Like, so basically they can top up into that prepaid card and they can use it to buy stuff on like Roblox or
Wow.
whatever.
And what is your story? I mean, how did you end up with Octopus?
Thai Chinese, right? Like I came to Hong Kong 7 or 8 years ago with visa, and then I stayed because it's such a dynamic city. So I've always been in payment business, like for the longest time, like so fintech and payments and tech. I did a little bit of time in Lenovo with one of the business groups, solution and services, and but way long before that, I was started my career as a journalist. And it's also quite interesting with the media environment now. Like media business model, at least the news media business model is quite broken, right? Like it's very hard to monetize attention, content. I still remember when my last media job was with Associated Press, and they had this position called like multi-platform journalist. So essentially, I would shoot video 1 week, and then the next week I have to write
Oh,
with the text department, and they try to experiment with how do you make a journalist like a master of none, right? Like yeah, basically you have to just cover and do everything.
right now you think that media will be focused on digital, but do you think it will be centralized or this will be given to individuals who just report on their favorite subjects?
Yeah. So the barrier of entry is so low that anyone can be their own media. But the pendulum is also probably swinging back. Like people actually want a more curated environment.
How do you measure things? Because you tell stories, you produce content. What is the ROIs or KPIs?
There are the vanity metrics, right? Like share of voice, or you, or to an extent, like add value, like advertising equivalent value, or even like like some companies call it like ripple effect. But ultimately, I think consumer vote with their wallets. So whatever you do, I think the revenue is sort of like a good indicator of um, how well you are communicating. And also I also believe in more qualitative method. Like if you do regular focus group or even go online to look at a more like qualitative aspect of your brand, right? I think that is probably helpful. Um, Ultimately, you want to know like how are you moving the needle for the business.
In terms of media channels, do you mainly go for online or TV?
Because we are relatively a mass brand. I like TV is still quite important for us, right? Like, and a lot of it is also earned, like trying to get opportunities to be covered on the main TV channels, right? Like there are two networks basically, like TVB and View TV, and then so you also want that exposure, and at the same time you also want to be in a niche area. Like so when we launch Octopus on Android, which is the first time you can use Octopus on an Android phone
Okay.
in Hong Kong, like we also go with KOLs, influencers in this space, because these guys tend to know more about the tech side and they can explain it better than us, right? Like how it actually works. it's not a science, but it's also an art. Like how do you pick the right KOL,
Right.
right? Like a partnership approach would probably be a more viable one. Like you want to, once you find the right influencers, you want to keep working with them to help you tell the story as it evolves. Obviously, there are like micro influencers, like who, or even like nano, right? Like that you
Yeah.
could, tap. But if you want to go for mass, I think like, you know, celebrities even are inevitable.
AI is a buzzword of today. Do you use AI in your work?
Yeah, we do use AI a lot in terms of trying to overcome like the blank page problem, right? Like so you don't really need to worry about writer's block or
Mm.
like artistic creative blocks anymore because you can use AI to help with that.
Many companies are involved in CSR activities and ESG. How about Octopus?
It's a very important part of what we do and who we are. Like you know we serve 98% of people in Hong Kong, right? Like that's our market penetration. So we always want to be able to give back. Actually, in the industry, we have one of the longest running CSR program that we runs with St. James Settlement, which is an NGO around digital and tech literacy.
Oh,
So we work with the NGO to identify like schools and students from disadvantaged background and try to give them the opportunity to learn more about STEM, right? So we've been running that program for this is the 19th year now.
wow.
So it's way long, like my yeah. So I think this is also something very meaningful, and we do that also ESG through our business, right? Like so, for example, our cards, like they're very sturdy, right? Like I
Yeah.
actually recently met a journalist, and he was showing me his card from primary school that he still use. So and then they're all like peeled off and that. I mean, we do normally help you repair it, and we repair like as much of
Mm.
them as possible, right? So nothing goes to the landfill, and we do recycle the materials. So it's actually a very circular way that we approach our product life cycle. But at the same time, I mean, like if you say, for example, you take 1% of the revenue, and for a small business, that's also a lot of money.
Yeah.
So we are also mindful of that.
1% is a lot for a business. Visa, I think, charges or MasterCard charges over 2% or 2.5. How does it compare to Octopus?
We are relatively more competitive, right? Like so compared to the card networks, we're actually quite competitive.
You are the head of communications, and sometimes you need your CEO to speak in front of the media, cameras, or public. How do you train your CEO to be a good media person?
To prepare my CEO for a media interview, I would over prepare them. The messaging needs to be on point, and they need to know exactly the key messages that they need to deliver.
And did you encounter any media crisis?
There are always crises, and that I think that's when people realize the value of communications. Building reputation is hard and it takes time, right? But having a good reputation can determine like how you recover from a crisis.
Octopus seems flawless. What can go wrong?
So 5% of Hong Kong GDP runs through Octopus. So
Oh,
people like spend a lot through our network. So we don't want to let people down. That's why we need to be prepared, right? Like it's just prepared for the worst.
you mentioned influencers, and you mentioned that you like to build long-term relationships with them. How do you build those relationships?
Building relationship with anyone, I think starting slow is probably a good idea. Treat influencers almost like as partner rather than just a vendor.
Running 5% of the Hong Kong GDP, do you have to worry about the price tag of the influencer?
Oh yeah, we do.
You
Yeah,
do?
we have very like if you run a business, it's important to control your
Mhm.
costs as well. What I mentioned earlier, like our program to help micro and small merchants, like controlling our costs is also part of
Mhm.
being able to not to pass on the cost to these like merchant partners as well.
Do you have a plan to become a virtual bank?
We are a payment experience
Mhm.
rather than like a banking service.
Okay. You are a very successful person. You worked with Visa, you are working with Octopus. What are the principles that you base your work or career on?
So recently I read this book by Tony Blair on leadership in the 21st century, and he talked about how a good leader should be optimistic, um, as well as being humble, right? Like because when you're optimistic, you can rally people around like a cause, um, and nobody want to go on a plane with a depressed pilot, right?
Mhm.
Like you want someone who is like would inspire confidence in you, and humility, because when you have a certain level of success, you need to be grounded in a way, because if you don't do that, um, naturally, then experience will teach you a lesson. My very first job, the night before, like I think my grandfather told me that you're almost like your word is your bond, right? Like, so you really need to have that integrity, right? Like your reputation precedes you. Like you can lose a job, you can lose a business, but your reputation stays
Right.
with you.
What's the skill today that you believe is the most important for success in work, in relationship?
It's actually a very hard question. To become successful in work and life is probably what I said just now, like humility, but one aspect of that, which is empathy. I think that's a superpower, to be able to understand or be in that person's shoes. And I think like that's the number one skills in, for example, like sales, and also in marketing, right? Like what is that person thinking or feeling? And to expand on that, I think in a way you have to be authentic to your true self as well. I think the Japanese has a word for it, like you have three faces, right? Like a face that other people see you in the public, the face that um I'm probably like butchering it, but people like a face that you have your immediate circle of friends that you want them to see, and then the face that only you yourself
Mm,
know about, right? And how do you manage that the dynamics between the different personas?
right. Would you say that unlearning something that you do professionally would help you do it better?
The one thing that I would unlearn is probably the perception around like failure and mistake. Like Miles Davis, he has this quote that I really like,
Mhm.
and he said that um, if you play a wrong note, it, it's the next note that determine whether it's good or bad, right? Like, so your relationship with failure, and especially myself, like because I might put too much pressure on myself to perform well, and if what would happen if you fail, I think it doesn't matter so much
Mhm.
if you fail. It's actually what you do subsequently that define that particular experience. So I would say that would be something that I probably need to. I'm still in the process of relearning, or having a better relationship with failure. Part of PR that formal education doesn't really teach well would be human interaction, like real human interaction. I mean, you can sit in a classroom like PR 101, right? And you can learn about Edward Bernays, nephew of Sigmund Freud. He invented the modern day PR, using psychoanalytical theory, etc., like subliminal message.
Mhm.
But actually, when you go out and you do your first job as an AE in an ad agency, right? Like that's when the real learning begins. Like, how do you talk to your client? How do you handle like pressure, or like not so nice colleagues?
Is there any small habit that you have cultivated consciously or unconsciously throughout your career that makes you a better performer?
I think it's about having gratitude, like being thankful, right, of where you are.
How do you do it? How are you grateful? Do you say thank you more often, or do you thank in your mind to the things that you achieved, or how does it work?
Yeah, I would, you know, I think my habit would probably be like every night before I go to sleep, I would think of things that I should be thankful for, right? Like, this presentation went well today,
Mm.
right?
So you must be very mindful person. If most people just jump on the bed and fall asleep immediately without really thinking.
Y- I don't know about other people, but I also, this is another practice that I don't do as frequent as I would like to, which is journaling. Like
Oh,
it's a creative outlet, right? I forgot which author kind of recommend that. Like, so basically, you just write, for certain amount of time or pages, nonstop, like things that come out from your mind, like first thing, like probably after you have your coffee in the morning, right? Like, and then just like keep journaling,
mm.
and I think that also serves as a little bit of reflection.
Ladies and gentlemen, Kinan Suchanawit. Thank you very much for coming, and we all hope that Octopus will always be the simplest way to pay.
Thank you, Philip, for having me.